Good morning. It is Friday, February 28th, 2025. We have a 10-second delay, Nerd Squad. This is a consensual recording of Mystic Gwen pursuant to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's right, the Bureau. I'm an employee of the FBI, but I've been authorized to state I'm an informant because there's such an uncanny amount of individuals going to prison after over 2 years of crimes being perpetrated against me without abatement. For over half a year, I've been illegally detained within my own home as well. That being said, these imbeciles, these North Everett Precinct officers and DCYF employees et al., who are going to be convicted for child abuse, child endangerment, multiple aggravated kidnapping charges, fraud, attempting to interfere and impede with an FBI investigation, actively attempting to defraud their employer, the state of Washington, attempting to defraud the Attorney General, attempting to defraud the United States of America, and the list goes on and on. Now, there's a lot of things that you need to figure out. So let's start with a few key points. One, if this live stream ends for any reason without me orally and explicitly telling you the end time, the domestic terrorists directly above me, men and women who are gearing up to go to prison before April is over, they should all be detained and arraigned. The whistleblowers are the only exception. Alternatively, they've had a lot of fellow officers coming over, actively banging on my door and screaming for me to open it, even though they've been getting cease and desist letters from me every single month for over a year and a half about their ongoing stalking, criminal trespass, ADA violations, reports about them and their premeditated felonies that they reject only to then make actionable the very felonies that I reported just a couple hours before. Anyway, they're all going to prison for the rest of their lives. These are not officers. These are not child welfare advocates. These are individuals that are domestic terrorists. Their group began as an aggravated criminal conspiracy. They criminally and illegally told people they were part of a legit operation and acquired a plethora of sealed, fraudulent court documents in order to make actionable the series of felonies they've since perpetrated. On August 6th, 2024, they willingly and intentionally decided to become a domestic terrorist organization. And now I've been under orders from the FBI since January 2nd to keep my door closed, not to engage with them even when they come banging on my windows and my door, screaming at me to open the door, men and women, like for instance, last Friday, a week ago. Until they are apprehended or they break in a final time, and then their asses are all apprehended less than 10 minutes later, including Unit 207 being seized. Whichever comes first. Now, if you're brand new here, you may be wondering, what the fuck is going on? It's going to take about 4 hours of listening time for you, and then probably about 20 minutes of reading. You'll want to begin with searching on this YouTube channel for Mystic Gwen versus the North Everett Precinct of Fraudsters, the Stalker, the Extortionists et al. That'll give you a video from December 30th that's just under 2 hours long. You're going to want to listen to that. Then you're going to want to listen to 2/16 3 a.m. debrief. That's another video from February 16th at 3 a.m. Also just under 2 hours long. Listen to that. Then you're going to want to read the descriptions in every YouTube live stream that's been set to public since February 23rd, the evening of. There's multiple videos. Unit 207's been actively having illegally and criminally pulled off of YouTube because they were unable to terminate them or tamper with them. They are stuck in their cycle of subterfuge. Their downward spiral, the FBI said. And over half of the individuals that frequent Unit 207 are whistleblowers that are actually victims themselves, 100% at risk of retaliation, according to the FBI, more severe than what I've experienced, which can only mean one thing. The FBI thinks at least one motherfucker would be willing to murder one of them if they knew that they were cooperating with the FBI. The FBI also stated that precincts that go this completely far off track in various states of any state employees who do the same thing have a propensity, an inclination before they're busted to illegally and criminally send their colleagues who they believe are cooperating with the FBI to the loony bin for 3 to 5 days. Now, the imbeciles upstairs get totally skittish and frantic anytime the recordings hit 6.5 hours or longer. There are women upstairs that are literally suicidal when that occurs. And that's not a joke. Since February 11th, they go completely off their rails. And I say that as a former mental health professional. They'll try anything. The last one, they were cutting off the internet. They were pretending like they owned films. They were doing anything and everything they could try to do. And I can't even check to see if the whole video is still up or if they shut it down or what. I don't know. I attempted to shut it down on my end, but that was after they had already shown repeatedly that they had cut off the internet because they're pretending to be my internet. Anyway, these individuals are going to prison for the rest of their lives. The only exception is the whistleblowers, who will be compensated, who will unfortunately have to go through the whole process of being detained, handcuffed, shoved in a large vehicle, and driven down to King County. But it's my understanding that they're not going to be strip searched, that they're going to be met by a federal marshal after they're in some sort of large enclosure with multiple other individuals who have just been arrested. And they're going to go to a nice hotel and have a federal marshal with a gun outside of their door and be given a couple $100s a day in pro diem. Why will they have a marshal outside of their door with a gun? Because if you've missed it, these City of Everett employees are crazy. They've perpetrated over 250 crimes against me, and by the FBI's count, over 80-something crimes against the United States government, and I have no idea what the Attorney General / State of Washington's count is. I know that they won't be getting hit with those indictments until they've been arraigned in King County by the FBI. It's 10:19 a.m. PST. Yeah, I guess that's all we've got to say. Shalom, motherfuckers. We're listening to the old ham radio. We got the ham radio up so that in the event that they terminate the live stream and they attack me, I can actively put out an SOS to everyone at the Navy base. That's why it's out. Verified, baby. Why? Because the Navy base records that shit. And I've got friends on the Navy base. Hey, federal felons, did you pray today? Just joking. If anybody's wondering what the FBI's latest brief was, it was that there are more individuals unwilling to go to prison for their boss than there was last week. Does that mean that someone new has blown the whistle? Perhaps. Or maybe it means someone who was supposed to do X, Y, and Z is like, no, I'm not doing that now. I don't know. I can hear exterior female stalker outside. I don't know if it's federal felon Kelly, federal felon Ann, or federal felon Jersey Devil. But we got a female exterior stalker to the right of the ham radio. Should I push the alarm button? Also, FYI, the ham radio is picking up DCYF channel, DCYF channel, DCYF channel, and of course, North Everett Precinct channels. Oh, she shouldn't be able to see that. I told you, this radio does more than yours. This radio does everything that a radio can do. How is that legal? Well, there's certain things I'm not legally allowed to use because I don't have a ham radio license. That's true. Wink, wink. Also, just to be clear, I have no idea. I'm listening to a radio station right now on it. And I think that it's the one here in Everett. I don't know if that radio station still exists because I haven't gone bicycling down that street in a long while. But this is like some non-existent, nobody listens to it radio channel, 80-something, you know? And we have a little radio station here in Everett, but I can't remember what it's called. I've never listened to it. I'm wondering if maybe it's from there. The reason, because the signal's pretty good for FM receiver trying to catch radio, pretty clear. You have to keep in mind, my home is in the ground, like literally. I'm not only in a basement unit, I'm feet into the ground. That's how this building was constructed. Or to put it another way, it's difficult to pick up an antenna signal. Not from the windows. From the windows, easy. The middle or towards the back of the house, the western or eastern side, difficult. So I've been thinking about those of you that have Stockholm syndrome and are going to prison for the rest of your life because you didn't want to take responsibility for your actions and admit that you fucked up, and or you're in love with your boss, whatever the reason is for the Stockholm syndrome. And here's what I've concluded. The only cure to Stockholm syndrome, are you ready? Are you ready? Not being a sack of shit federal felon going to prison for the rest of their lives and having some self-esteem. That's the cure. The cure to Stockholm syndrome is having some self-esteem and not sticking your big, ugly asses in the FBI's face, asking them to put you in prison. That's the cure. Self-esteem. Man, this Jew knows too much, dude. She knows too much. You don't even know how much I know, you dumbasses. You're fucking dumb. You're dumb. Not talking to the whistleblowers, talking to the female exterior stalkers and those of you that still think you have any fucking plans other than to continue to do shit that's going to make you be in prison for longer. And also, shout out to those of you that not only have a conscience in the soul, but also some fucking self-esteem. I told you guys last night, I would not go to prison for anyone unless somebody was being attacked and I had a gun. I would have no qualms with shooting someone in the kneecap or below the knee to get them off of someone else. And it wouldn't be my go-to either, but I'm just like assuming worst case. Like it's a fucking giant tall guy kicking the ass of somebody. I'm not going to go in there and try and fight a giant tall guy. Not if I have a shotgun. If I'm going to tell him to stop, and if he doesn't, I'm going to shoot off his fucking right kneecap. But I would never go to prison because some fucking cunts wanted a promotion and to keep their job and to get a raise. Not ever. Not ever. And in many cases, like Mini-Me upstairs, she was afraid she'd lose her job and get written up. Girl, you were never looking at that. You were looking at going to prison since March 2023. Same with your idol, the Jersey Devil. Anyway, I did ask my super awesome neighbor to help me out with the Wi-Fi pass again because of these knuckleheads, and I am going to speculate here because I know I'm correct because I can hear all the men and women upstairs, that when my internet shut off in the preceding live stream right before I attempted to end it because I don't know whether or not they did end it when they shut off the internet, that means that Russ got me a Wi-Fi pass and they're actively hacking that in every way possible to try and pretend to be me like they've been doing, even though, do you guys realize, little idiots, how many hours of footage we now have of us sharing the screen and you being imbeciles? And then, lest you forgot, the FBI having everything all the way back over a year from now, like guaranteed beyond a reasonable doubt proof of you destroying my laptops and changing my test and trying to prevent me from talking to professors. You're dumb as fuck. Whistleblowers, remember, they make the best rockets. Pray in the direction of Mecca. You're pissed too. You gotta mirror the craziest ones in your little brethren. Someone just start turning to Mini-Me too, codename Lisa, and just be like, we must terminate the live stream, Lisa, we must. Somebody just try doing that to her all day, and let's see if she shuts the fuck up for the first time since the 11th. Somebody do it, okay? It'll give you cover too. Just turn to her and be like, we need to terminate it. We need, just keep repeating her shit to her. Look her dead in the eyes when you do it all day. Let's see if it works. Now, the FBI believes all of the idiots going to prison for the longest time, that they're a jolly bunch for the next couple of weeks. And they said that yesterday. So to me, that means they're a jolly bunch till March 12th. They're a jolly bunch till March 12th. They don't seem jolly this morning. From what I heard of the exterior stalking, she sounded the way she sounds almost every Friday. Monstrous.
From one of the great jazz albums of all time, the Time Out album, where they experimented in time signatures. You know, not everything is a waltz, or not everything is in 5/4, or not everything is in 4/4. Heck, strange meadowlark for you there, Dave Brubeck, of course, Paul Desmond, and the rest of the crew on the Time Out album. Some solo guitar from Larry Coryell before that. And coming up, we're going to hear from Duke playing the piano, Duke Ellington, and Seattle's own Thomas Marriott, who is performing soon. Right up in a moment, though, it's Sarah Vaughan time. Sassy's ready. If you are, Midday Jazz comes to you with support from Tacoma Arts Live, presenting Isaac Mizrahi and his 6-piece jazz band for an evening of comedy, commentary, cabaret, and music. Saturday, March 15th at 7:30 at the Pantages Theater. Tickets at TacomaArtsLive.org. Every Sunday afternoon at 2 on Jazz Northwest, we take a survey of the regional jazz scene. We'll spend an hour to highlight the artists who live and perform regionally, as well as musicians who have played and recorded live in the Northwest. I'm Kareem Candy, the new host of Jazz Northwest, and I'll be highlighting the best talent in the region. Join us this Sunday afternoon at 2 for Jazz Northwest on 88.5 KNKX.
Dude, the fact that she actually thought for a while she was going to get a raise. What fucking insanity. You're not getting a raise. You're going to prison for the rest of your life. Say goodbye to your life of living lavishly. You're going to end up spending the end of your life thinking top ramen is a delicatessen, and say bye-bye to drinking good wine and hello to drinking rotten fruit fermenting in somebody's toilet in a prison cell.
KNKX to Mystic Charlie Hunter on Midday Jazz 88.5 KNKX, going back 30 years to the Bing 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 album. And a weird sound, he had some fun with the processing on Warnell's Yorkies. That's Charlie Hunter on the guitar. We were back in 1961, a trio session with Duke Ellington. Before that, Thomas Marriott on the trumpet, Seattle's own, and Sarah Vaughan in the set. Some great music always coming your way. You know, we do studio sessions when people come through town, and we also do them with our local performers. Marina Albero is up in a moment from a studio session in 2019. Thanks to you for supporting Midday Jazz, along with Multicare, which believes that healthy communities need more than healthcare. For 140 years, Multicare has worked to help make communities healthier by investing in care beyond hospital walls, growing programs locally, and expanding access to healthcare. More at multicare.org. Sometimes you just want to turn on the radio. It's more. Specialist LLC is responsible for the content of this ad. Attention, former child.
Why are you such a nerd? Yeah, I know, Whistleblower is. It's like the perfect song to you.
Something happens to a child post-vaccination. Most of the time, it is some tragedy that would have happened anyway, triggered by a virus, but in this case,
Yay, I can pick up NPR
triggered by a vaccine.
at a weird fucking angle,
Loss
man.
to vaccine manufacturers from this kind of circumstance is something that where we want to prevent that and yet still compensate families, and that's why the program is there. If it is not there, manufacturers will simply stop manufacturing vaccines because
Of course, they're talking about shit I don't want to hear about. Madonna, baby. Boy, you've got to prove your love to me. Oh, yes. Too bad it's not Saturday yet. Billy Joel's so cool.
Jack FM found for you. This weekend, you have
animal cruelty globally.
Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance.
Nice. I get 99.1 too. I like the classical station. 98.1. and 99.92. It's weird that the antenna has to be at this angle to get these stations, because I tried this earlier and I wasn't getting any of them. You're a nerd. And Guitar Hero is lame. Lame. Clown Peter silvered out. Oh, I can't change. Nazis better run far away, yeah. Mystic Gwen store is a no, unless you want to go to the federal penitentiary. To answer your question, yes, I have a belt clip too. I told you everything. What can I do with this radio that yours can't? I could talk to pilots at Payne Field. But that would be illegal. I'm not going to do that. But your radio can't do that.
Times Alive is the best-selling live album of all time. And for this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
Show me the way. Let's see what else we can get with the antenna at this angle. Let's go back to NPR and see if they're done talking about vaccinations. It's a boring topic.
NPR's Chloe Salas reports both parties remain far apart on a year-long budget plan. Congressional Republicans complain that Democrats are putting up new, quote, outrageous demands to keep the government open past the March 14th deadline. The stalemate has Senate appropriators asking for a short-term funding bill to buy more time for the talks, while President Trump and some Republicans say that stopgap plan should last a year instead. Trump's ongoing effort to dismantle certain federal programs and protect funding to entitlement programs such as Medicaid. House Leader Hakeem Jeffries stopped short of saying if Democrats will force a government shutdown.
I want to leave it on the charger, and it doesn't get the signal on the charger from right here. See? Put the shit in here, and there's nothing. It's like fuzz. Ugh.
Texas. It's NPR News.
This is KUOW News. I'm Kevin Kniestead in Seattle.
Let's find an outlet
More
where
than
I can
half of
still
the
get
1,100
NPR.
corporate employees Starbucks just laid off are based in Washington. The company confirmed 612 workers in its home state lost their jobs this week. James Bowen is one of them. He spent the past 3 years working on a team dedicated to bring Starbucks free tuition program to workers in other countries. With so many companies laying off workers over the past year, Bowen is entering a competitive job market. Incredible people. Might be fun to not role and nothing you can do about it. Just hoping, maybe pray that the stars align and the systems let you through and it works out. Starbucks declined an interview for this story. CEO Brian Nichol announced the layoffs of the other 2 employees for the industry. Simplifying the in-store experience amid sagging quarterly sales. A bill that would allow
Oh, it's not the antenna, it's the charger when it's charging.
City Council, the Governance, Accountability, and Economic Development Committee approved the measure yesterday, despite pushback from the Port of Seattle. Port commissioners told council members earlier this week they're concerned about having more people in the area on a daily basis, given the amount of train and freight traffic in SoDo. But supporters say the housing is needed to help the local workforce. The full council will consider the bill March 18th. And the National Weather Service says Seattle could see its 3rd straight day of 60-plus degree weather today. The last time that happened, it was in February. That happened in
Oh
February.
my gosh, it felt so cold this morning, dude. Coming from out from under the warm blankies to this living
And
room.
more sunshine tomorrow. There's a chance for rain Saturday night, and that could extend through early next week. Ice will drop down into the low to mid.
Oh, why are you playing news? Is it proof of life, guys? Just joking. Believe me, everybody knows I'm alive.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
This is On Point. I'm Deborah Becker, in for Magna Chakrabarty. Michelle Cook did not have a history of being overweight until she turned 47.
Until she started eating Taco Bell and McDonald's every day, dude.
Despite eating well, working out, it was just not coming off. She gained about 40 pounds, leading to high cholesterol and blood pressure. So her doctor recommended that she do what millions of Americans are doing, go on a weight loss drug. So in January,
I don't recommend that. I recommend a liquids only diet,
then of course,
and once every week, eat as much and whatever you want. Do that for a month. You'll drop over 20 pounds. And that liquid only diet can literally be, I'm having milkshakes twice a day. That's fine. That's fine. It doesn't even need to be sugar free.
I'm not going to be able to get the medication. But when I spoke to my doctor, and they said that they could have it compounded locally, and I could get it from their office.
And then you have to remember that, biologically speaking,
especially at my doctor's, recommendation,
humans weren't designed to eat every day. We were designed to gorge ourselves when able.
Being that it was arranged with my doctor,
the problem is these days, most people are always able.
Whatsoever between the Zepbound and the compounded version. Michelle's insurance did not cover the Zepbound, so compounded or not, she had to pay out of pocket. That was expensive, even with a rebate from the drug maker. So we don't have a weight loss rider on our insurance, but my doctor did submit, authorizations to try to get it covered because I was classified as...
Remember the song, Mystic Gwen's door is a no, unless you want to go to the federal penitentiary. And remember to wave and smile for the FBI's surveillance camera and the Everett Police Department's own surveillance equipment, which has been actively used to stalk me for more than 2 years. But we're only talking about the last 2 years. Smile and wave.
The compounded version was $100 cheaper. Even so, given that expense, Michelle didn't want to stay on Zepbound for long. So, after 8 months and 40 pounds later, she stopped taking the drug. All in all, she paid about $4,000 for it. A bit of a financial hurdle, but I chose to give it a go because I wasn't happy with where my health was going, with the high blood pressure, the high cholesterol. But I will tell you, once I lost the weight, cholesterol, blood pressure, no longer a problem. So far, Michelle's been able to keep the weight off. She says the drug was life-changing. I'm so glad I did it. I would do it again. If I had to go back in time and make that choice again, 100% would do it again. It was incredibly helpful to me, made a huge change in me becoming more healthy. But again, I can't emphasize enough that it's not a magic shot in and of itself. You have to do so much hard work along with it to be successful, and then continue that hard work to maintain your success. It's really a 100% lifestyle change that can't end, or else the weight indeed will come back on. That's Michelle Cook of Derry, New Hampshire. The weight loss drug Michelle was taking, Zepbound, has been in short supply for the past few years, as have many of the brand name weight loss drugs. Michelle was only able to get the compounded version, sort of a copy of the brand name medication, because of that shortage. But recently, the FDA announced that the 2 main ingredients in these new weight loss drugs are no longer in a shortage, so the drugs cannot be compounded. That means people like Michelle, who are easily getting the medication at a lower price, will not be able to anymore. This hour, we want to talk about these blockbuster drugs and what the regulatory wrangling might mean for patients, as well as the companies who've been filling in the gaps because of the short supply. Joining us first is Dr. Jody Duche. She's an assistant professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and a clinical endocrinologist who specializes in medical weight management. She joins us from Boston. Welcome to On Point, Dr. Duche.
Hello, Deborah. Thank you so much for having me.
And we should start by saying no conflicts or potential conflicts that you need to tell us about before this conversation, right?
That is right.
Okay. When you hear stories like Michelle's, who was getting this drug and then had to switch things around because of the shortage, which started in 2022 for many of these weight loss drugs, is that common? Have you heard this story a lot for in your practice?
Yes, definitely, especially around the time frame that you mentioned. There was a period of time where we were getting, I work at an academic medical center, and we were getting emails every single week telling us about supply issues at our own pharmacy in terms of what are the shortages, what is the duration of waiting time, and I was also hearing it from patients at all kinds of local pharmacies. So there was a period of time where there were significant delays in getting people started and also interruptions in treatment. Even though there was insurance coverage, there was just no supply of the medication.
So you would not refer a patient to a compounding pharmacy or anything like that? As we heard with Michelle, you would basically tell them they would have to delay their treatment for a bit until the supply issues were resolved.
Right. I wouldn't say that I draw a complete line in the sand on this issue, but I haven't referred any patients to specific compounding pharmacies or to any of the companies that have sprung up that are supplying these compounded medications.
Now, these drugs, Zepbound, that Michelle was taking, Ozempic, Wegovy, these are wildly popular. Can you give us a brief explanation of how they work in general?
Sure. So these medications work primarily in two ways. There are receptors for GLP-1 throughout the body, but the main ways that they work for weight loss are in the brain. There are receptors for GLP-1, and that helps to, and when they are activated by pharmacologic doses of GLP-1, that helps to suppress appetite. So
just for our listeners, explain GLP-1.
Sure. That is glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1. And as I said, there are receptors all throughout the body, including in the brain. And so when these receptors are activated in the brain, they sort of activate fullness centers or satiety centers. So you don't have the desire to eat. So this explains, I think, a lot of the term food noise that people have been talking about patients and in the literature and in the press. So that is how it works centrally in the brain. It also works outside the brain, what we call in the periphery, and that is in the stomach. It keeps food there longer. So it delays food leaving the stomach. And so in two ways that helps to suppress appetite. One, it stretches the stomach, and that sends signals back to the brain that there's a lot of business down there, and so you don't need to eat. And also there are different hormones that are secreted once you have food in the stomach and moving into the first part of the small intestine that also send hormonal signals back to the brain saying things are busy down here, we're digesting food, you don't need to eat. So people feel full for longer and end up eating less.
So part of the reason that we've had this shortage for the past 3 years is really that so many people are taking these kinds of drugs. Do they really benefit that number of people? I mean, do you think that really this many people should be taking their drugs, so this is being done to them in order for them to lose weight?
Well, there's a wide spectrum of should people take it. So there are guidelines that doctors follow that are based on BMI, which itself is a bit of a complicated metric and shouldn't really be used as the only metric. But unfortunately, insurance sometimes boxes us in because insurance has these BMI criteria. So there are the BMI criteria. BMI is body mass index, which is your weight divided by weight in kilograms divided by your height, and it's basically kind of a way of looking at your density as opposed to just your body weight because it corrects your body weight for your height. So body mass CPS index greater than 27 with these comorbidities that Michelle mentioned. Classically, high blood pressure, high cholesterol are the main ones. Also, now sleep apnea and fatty liver disease, or body mass index greater than 30 without comorbidities. So those are the guidelines for which the doctors typically follow when they're deciding if they're going to prescribe these medications.
Are you getting a lot of patients asking for them?
Yes, yes, definitely. And so patients get, you mentioned before about qualifying. So, there are these BMI criteria, but that sometimes is problematic because a person might not quite meet that threshold, but have other indications for doing it, or the insurance might raise the bar and say, well, that's fine. For us, the BMI criteria is 35 or even 40, so they really are making it a little bit more difficult to get. But in terms of, should people be taking them, I would say that certain people benefit more than others. People who have these comorbidities, and recently semaglutide, which is Wegovy, was approved for secondary prevention of heart disease in people with overweight and obesity, and tirzepatide, which is Zepbound, which works through two hormones, is approved for sleep apnea, again, for people with overweight or obesity. So people who have not just excess body weight, but serious metabolic comorbidities really can benefit. Do I think that everyone with excess weight needs to take these medications? No. Do I think that excess weight on every person is unhealthy? No. So, that's where it gets to be really, really tricky between the patient and the physician.
I'm going to go to a break in just about a minute here, but just are you surprised by the popularity of these drugs? Because we're talking millions and millions of people in the U.S. taking these drugs. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised because of what happened with social media. It's unusual that a medication, that the popularity surges because of, largely because of that, and because of, kind of widespread coverage in the media, and especially social media and the press. So, no, I'm not surprised. I mean, our society views excess weight through a negative lens. So, I'm not surprised.
Okay. We're talking about blockbuster weight loss drugs and how less expensive versions of these drugs will likely be restricted in the coming months. I'm Deborah Becker. This is On Point.
Hey, there's a bunch of really great stuff here to suck on.
What? On the next Radio Lab, we're going up. These trees are huge. In the treetops.
It's like being a detective.
To chase a mystery.
There's something going on up here.
What's about to happen?
Oh my gosh!
Stumble into the secret garden.
This is amazing.
I know. In the sky. That's on the next Radio Lab. Don't miss it. Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock on 94.9 KUOW, Seattle's NPR news station.
Support comes from Tubco, remodeling bathrooms for nearly 50 years. Showroom in Redmond.
And from SGG, presenting Anushka Shankar at the Moore Theater on March 13th. Accompanied by her ensemble, Anushka performs with a neoclassical approach across multiple genres and styles with her sitar. Tickets and more at stgpresents.org. 52 degrees in South Seattle. Forecast for today, sunny with a high of 60. Then partly cloudy overnight with a low of 41. Tomorrow, partly sunny, a slight chance of showers and a high of 59. It's 11:20.
Support for On Point comes from BetterHelp, committed to making mental well-being a priority and offering support in taking on everything life demands, with therapists available to communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public. And the Museum of Science in Boston, dedicated to inspiring a lifelong love of science in everyone, in museums, classrooms, and online, offering engineering design challenges, digital experiences, live presentations, and more. MOS.org.
This is On Point.
Informant. I'm Deborah Becker. We're talking about the blockbuster weight loss drugs that many Americans are taking and how cheaper versions of these drugs will likely be restricted in the coming months. We want to discuss what that might mean for patients and the companies who are making the less expensive options. We're joined by Dr. Jody Duche. She's an assistant professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and a clinical endocrinologist who specializes in medical weight management. And Dr. Duche, before the break, you were talking about some restrictions on the part of insurers, perhaps increasing the body mass index that might be required before someone could get a prescription for these weight loss drugs. And I'm wondering, what kind of restrictions are you seeing? Are you having to reduce the number of folks that you're recommending take these weight loss drugs?
So I would say I'm not reducing my recommendations. However, I would notice that, especially after the first of the year, despite some new indications, there have been changes in the criteria for coverage by certain insurance companies. I will say overall, there's been more success getting it covered for people with sleep apnea who say have Medicare. That's been a huge hurdle in the past. And Medicare just did not cover these at all for weight loss, but now Medicare is covering them for secondary prevention of heart disease and for the indication of sleep apnea in conjunction with overweight or obesity. So that's actually improved access quite a lot. The private insurance companies are, I think, changing the playing field by sometimes increasing the BMI.
So
And people who've been, excuse me, go ahead.
No, go ahead. So more people being denied.
Right, so people who've been on them can no longer stay on them in many cases, which is really frustrating.
Now, you mentioned these less expensive compounded versions because I imagine that some folks also cannot afford to pay for these drugs if they have to pay out of pocket and if they're denied by their insurers, right?
Right. There are some coupons available, and there are ways to get name brand the two starting doses from the company directly for tirzepatide. You can get that much less expensively for about $500 a month in a vial, but only at the lowest two doses and only from Lilly directly. However, patients do ask me about getting compounded medication, and as I said, I don't recommend it. I don't write prescriptions for compounded semaglutide or tirzepatide, but people do ask and are very interested in this option.
And why is that? Why don't you?
I don't, because there's too many unknowns. I don't know pharmacy to pharmacy about what's in the product in terms of strength, in terms of other agents, in terms of purity. I don't know about the dosing. I mean, pharmacy to pharmacy, the dosing could be different. So it's really, there's no standardization out there for these compounded medications. And so I just would not feel comfortable managing that at all. It's not like, with the name brand, you have a whole dosing regimen and you know that it's coming from the manufacturer and it's been gone through a rigorous inspection process. And I just think it would be unsafe for me to prescribe these compounded medications without knowing those details.
Would it also be a legal liability for a physician to suggest that someone go to a compounding pharmacy and it may be a compounding pharmacy that isn't entirely safe?
Well, so suggesting that they go there, I mean, they need a prescription. So I think that it would only be a liability if you wrote the prescription. If you say to them, you can go to a pharmacy that compounds it, but I won't prescribe it, that's one thing. Or people sometimes ask about a lot of these companies that have sprung up that are supplying them. And again, I really don't know anything about where each individual company manufactures these compounded medications. Is it domestically? Is it internationally? So, and there's so many of them that it's hard to keep up. So I tell people, if you want to do that, that's fine, but I can't be responsible for managing any part of that. The dose, the side effects, anything.
Well, we want to bring someone into the conversation now who has been monitoring this explosion of companies trying to provide these weight loss drugs, and that's Daniel Gilbert. He's a reporter covering the business of medicine for the Washington Post. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to On Point, Daniel.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks for having me.
Hi, thanks for being with us. So, give us an idea, before we get into an explanation of compounding pharmacies here in more detail, give us an idea of the number of people, what we know about the number of people who are taking these weight loss drugs right now.
Well, we know that there are millions of people who are taking the FDA-approved version of these weight loss drugs, and that's Wegovy and Zepbound. The number of people who are taking compounded weight loss medications is harder to identify. There's just less solid information about it. What we've seen from some of the compounding associations is estimates on the order, I think they've said, of like 80 million prescriptions filled within 12 months. So most...
I just want to say shout out to Codenames Glenn and Phil.
Analysts estimate a pretty significant share of people who are using compounded GLP-1 weight loss medications.
But especially Codename Glenn.
So let's talk about this. There was a shortage of the non-compounded, the brand name drugs declared about 3 years ago. And so to fill that void, compounding pharmacies were utilized to make a version of these drugs so it could be used by people. And that's what happened here. So now we have these compounding pharmacies that have a huge slice of the market and have been able to make these drugs less expensively. And then recently the FDA says, well, shortage isn't over anymore. These brand name drug makers can make the brand name version again, so we don't need these compounding pharmacies. Is that essentially where we are?
That's about it. And that scenario that you described just captivated my attention when I came onto it a couple of years ago, because one of the roles that compounding pharmacies can play is when the FDA designates a drug in shortage, compounding pharmacies are supposed to be able to step in and fill that gap while the drug is in shortage. It's designed to be a temporary stopgap measure, but in this case, it lasted a long time. I mean, more than 2 years, or approaching 2 years for depending on the drug, and it lasted so long, and there was so much demand for these drugs that having it on the shortage list for this period of time gave rise to this whole other industry that is built around being able to offer less expensive compounded weight loss medications.
Right, and of course, these compounding pharmacies are not just sitting around saying, oh, well, the FDA declared the shortage over, right? We spoke with Lee Rosebush, who's chair of the Outsourcing Facility Association, and that's a trade group of large-scale compounders. The association is suing, actually, the FDA over stopping the shortage for 2 of the main ingredients in the diet drugs. He argues the drug shortage is not over. And
hey, you guys want me to hop on your channel and just start yelling through there? She makes the best rockets!
2025 SEC filings, Novo themselves stated that the quote, supply constraints, quote, and another quote, drug shortage notifications will continue until the foreseeable future. And we know based on patient
Ching
reports,
Chang Chong, she's Kim J-O.
that's why
All her rockets kamikaze.
And then, of course, we heard from Scott Brunner, who's CEO of the Alliance for...
She should get a Guinness Book of World Records. Individual who attempted to send the most other individuals to prison on her behalf, totaling over 50 since August.
There's no reliable data on the number of patients who are taking the compounded versions of these drugs, so the FDA doesn't know the demand. So how can it say that there's enough supply?
The problem is that compounding is generally a cash only business, and because it's cash only, there's no real central repository of which pharmacies are preparing which compounded drugs, how many patients.
Oh my gosh. And the reason...
So any data that FDA
I'm not even going to say.
able to ascertain,
Let's just say it's Friday. And on Fridays, the most psychopathic woman going to prison for the longest likes to do a lot of exterior stalking. But if you've been reading the descriptions and paying along, she's been here pretty much every day for the last 8, even at 1 in the morning, stalking on the exterior and plotting and scheming and berating and harassing and demeaning other individuals, basically saying this is the translator. You will go to prison for me. Get the Jew.
That the shortage of these drugs is really over because of the widespread demand.
Well, it's a really good question.
And then you might be thinking, well, they could just say no. Yeah, you try saying no to her. You say no to her, and according to the FBI, she's like a fucking guard dog. She just gets in your face and barks the same thing 500 different ways of saying the same thing.
Prescriptions that go through insurance, it's just much easier to track. That said, the FDA...
What's up?
...into this, or it should.
Don't at me. I'm not the one.
What the largest compounding pharmacies...
All of a sudden, there's silence on the exterior at 11:31.
The scale of, at least of their production.
Oh no, I hear her again.
Considered what the Outsourcing Facilities Association.
Maybe it'll be a repeat of last Friday, and there will be people committing over 5 felonies outside of my door, banging and slamming on the window and moving private property and screaming, "Open the door!" Even though we know we're going to prison and that this is 100% illegal, like it has been for 2 years.
There were orders from semaglutide, that's Wegovy, that they are able to eat basically.
It's cool, dude. The FBI's been having fun with all of the little clips, guys. They've made some excellent compilations you'll see right before you're sentenced.
Safely. And Dr. Duchesne mentioned that there are so many companies doing this that it is difficult to assess the safety. What do we know? You said there is some FDA oversight here. There may be some information about at least the market of this drugs, manufacturing of some of these drugs, but what do we know about safety, and how do patients know whether a drug that they're getting is safe?
It's a tricky issue, and what the FDA says about compounded medications in general is that they are less safe than products that the FDA will review from end to end and formally approve, like the brand name medications, the weight loss drugs, Wegovy and Zepbound in this case. But there isn't zero oversight there. That for many compounding pharmacies that are licensed by state boards of pharmacy, they have pharmacy inspectors coming into their facilities on a regular basis to examine how they do what they do and the conditions that they are making sterile medications for those that have a sterile compounding lab. And then for larger facilities, the FDA also has inspectors that would go in and look at those facilities. In terms of what we know about safety, we have seen anecdotal reports of people having some bad reactions to compounded weight loss medications. The FDA has, last year, put out a warning that some people were injecting too much semaglutide, making mistakes with it. Because one of the differences here is that, say, Ozempic and Wegovy or the Jarl and Zepbound, they come in auto-injector pens with doses that are pre-drawn. But when you get the compounded versions, they come in vials.
And then remember, there's not to be a police report today. I don't know why. Doesn't make any sense if you think about it logically, except for that it's because the FBI renamed the North Everett Precinct the Precinct of Stalkers last month. Ergo, the last police report of last Friday, which was rejected before it was even 30 minutes in the morning, and was rejected because it had reports of all of the crimes that have happened since, that had happened before it: stalking, Class A witness, tampering, FBI informant, retaliation, obstruction, trespass, AD, all those things. It was rejected because the idiot that is responsible for over 50 plus individuals being at risk of going to prison since August told them to reject it so that they could come and do the premeditated repeat, which was caught on the live stream. And that's her goal for, according to the FBI, basically another week straight. And according to Unit 207, today, tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
How do folks folks gauge safety there. And you have a great story.
It doesn't change anything. It's still 100% illegal in a series of felonies. No position, no fraudulent document acquired by the domestic terrorist organization that previously was an aggravated criminal conspiracy and then made that transformation on August 6th. That went around telling people and institutions they corrupted for the last 2 years per the FBI they were part of a legit operation. And then the FBI confirmed never, not one single day, every individual I reported in 2017 as threatening every fucking thing you've made actionable. Every one of them is involved in going to prison.
Websites, online pharmacies.
So the orders are the same. The door stays closed like you've all known since January 2nd, minus when you had the kids that you abused for 13 months directly and with others, discriminating against their disabilities in order to abuse them, in order to facilitate the premeditated kidnappings you're all going to be charged with, which will be aggravated per the FBI. And then you chose to add more child abuse and child endangerment after 19 days of discussing it without abatement, how you were going to break in the month of January 2025, only to then use those disabled minors to participate and facilitate that break-in, which the FBI said is aggravated child endangerment you're all going to be charged with, including those of you in Unit 207 that were thinking that you could just pretend like it's not your problem. You're looking at intentional misconduct. You're looking at failure to act. And then keep in mind, you've had on record that the door is to stay closed and I am to stay silent until you're apprehended, or you break in again using adults and then you're all apprehended, according to the FBI, under 10 minutes. And that condo is seized upstairs.
People are using these medications for a purpose that we did not intend, and we're going to take them off the website. And within hours, they had taken those pages, like the very page I used to order the medication offline. And so, no, I had no intention of using it, but I definitely did not use it.
Oh boy. Talking about blockbuster weight loss drugs, legitimate and not. So much on the show today. We'll be back after a break. I'm Deborah Becker. This is On Point.
On Point will continue in a minute on KUOW 94.9 Seattle. It's 11:39. Coming up at noon, KUOW's Week in Review. Here's a preview. Hi, it's Bill Radke. Federal workers in Washington feel the pain of Trump.
And keep in mind, everybody, none of this is new. They knew the day before they became a domestic terrorist organization, they were 100% under FBI investigation because the FBI made me give them a courtesy call so that I would state it and it would be recorded by the Attorney General in the state of Washington as they're all getting indictments and arraignments in Snohomish Superior after their asses are in King County.
Presenting Kathy Griffin, My Life on the PTSD List at North Theater this Saturday, March 1st. Tickets available at livenation.com. 52 degrees in South Seattle, sunny today with a high of 60. Tonight, partly cloudy, low of 41. Tomorrow, Saturday, partly sunny, slight chance of showers, high of 59.
What weighs 25,000 pounds, has a bird-like face, and lives in the depths of the ocean? Are you trying to get me to believe in the Kraken? No! On the latest episode of Spectacular Specimens, KUOW's podcast for curious kids and adults, we meet one of the most elusive creatures on the planet, the beaked whale. Listen to Spectacular Specimens with your favorite kids on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Support for On Point comes from the Mirotra Institute for Business, Markets, and Society, hosting the Is Business Broken podcast, featuring conversations with academics, industry leaders, and politicians. More at ibms.bu.edu. And MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. This is On Point. I'm Deborah Becker. We're talking about the blockbuster weight loss drugs and how cheaper versions of them will likely be restricted soon. What might that mean for patients and the companies making these less expensive options? We're joined by Dr. Jody Duche, who's an assistant professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and a clinical endocrinologist. Also with us, Daniel Gilbert, a reporter covering the business of medicine for the Washington Post. And we've been hearing about the cost of these drugs. In the U.S., the lowest price for a monthly injection of the drug Ozempic is $968. And some researchers and others say that's way too much. Melissa Barber is a health economist at
That one must work because Annie Letterman took it, Brittany Schmidt took it, Tim Dillon took it. It didn't look like it had any effect on Tim Dillon, or maybe he only took it once and didn't like it. But Brittany Schmidt and Annie Letterman, they were never fat, but they were both a little bit chunky in previous podcast episodes you can find. And now they both look great. So I think that one must really work. I also think that it's a horrible idea. I feel like, okay, it's making you lose weight. It's doing something else. What else is it doing? Is there a brain-eating amoeba growing in your brain from taking it? I don't know, man. I want to do it. Liquid diet.
Arguing that it's not a fair comparison, especially considering that things such as R&D costs were not included in Barber's generic version. But Barber says the maker of Ozempic, Novo Nordisk, has not provided information about its R&D costs, so her team couldn't make a direct comparison. She says she stands by her study.
The same costing algorithm that was used in this paper for GLP-1s has been used for other drugs. So an example of where our estimate came out to be extremely accurate was for the cost of insulin glargine. So we estimated that the cost would be between $1.20 and $5. And Sanofi actually disclosed their costs as part of a U.S. Senate inquiry, and their disclosed costs line up exactly with what we had reported.
That's Melissa Barber, a health economist who conducted that Yale study. We'll get back to Congress and the price of these drugs in just a moment. But Daniel Gilbert, I'm wondering, why is the price so high in this country? And what do we know about costs in the U.S. for these weight loss drugs like Ozempic compared to other nations?
This is always a thorny question, and it's endlessly frustrating for patients and policymakers who look and see what the list price of a medication in the U.S. is, and then look and see what the price is of the same medication in, say, Europe.
Daniel, did we lose you? We may have lost Daniel. Dr. Duche, are you with us?
I am.
I'm editing in the description, Nerd Squad, at 11:43 a.m.
Do you feel that many of your patients are not able to take some of these weight loss drugs because of cost? How much is that a factor?
Well, it's a factor in a few ways. If they have to pay out of pocket for almost all patients, that's a complete non-starter because the injectable, the auto injectors are usually about $1,100 to $1,300 per month. Sometimes people are able to get coupons and bring it down to say $500 or $600, but also sometimes insurance does cover it, but the copay is very, very high. So even with coverage, the copays are high, and that's set by insurance. So yes, it's a major factor in terms of people being able to start and stay on these medications.
Hey, we heard that story from Daniel right before the break about ordering online from a company that really was selling white clumps of something and claiming that it was a cheaper weight loss drug, and then of course taking the ads down once they realized they were sending that to a reporter for the Washington Post. And you mentioned that you were concerned about prescribing during the shortage, right, to folks who may not be able to get it, and where they might then get it if they have a prescription from you. So I guess what advice would you give to people because of this proliferation of companies and, of course, lawsuits on the part of these companies to keep a share of the market? It's going to continue. What do you tell your patients?
Well, are generally not as effective, and in some cases they are contraindicated because they can increase blood pressure. But I have also had some patients who have had success with some of the older options. So there are other FDA-approved medications besides these. For example, there's a medication called Qsymia, which is a combination of fentermine and topiramate. There is a medication called Contrave, which is a combination of bupropion and naltrexone. These are FDA-approved medications that people don't really hear much about, that you can prescribe as well. So it's not always that there are no options whatsoever. And people are often disappointed if they're unable to get the medication, the injectable medications, the GLP-1s or the dual agonist tirzepatide. But I do tell people that, there are other things that we could potentially try.
Daniel Gilbert is back with us, I'm told. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, sorry about that. Not sure what happened there.
It's okay. It's always technology. So I guess we were talking about these difference in costs, especially in terms of the U.S. and other countries, which we've heard a lot about. But I want to hear it from you in terms of this $968 minimum cost in the U.S. on average that we heard during these congressional hearings, and what are people paying in other countries?
Yeah, it's an incredibly complex question in terms of what we pay compared to what other countries pay, but at a very high level, the United States government takes a different approach to drug pricing than other countries. Other countries are much more hands-on in negotiating how much drugs will cost and how much patients will pay for them, whereas the United States doesn't really do that, at least it hasn't recently. And so it's in the United States, it's the drug makers who set the price, and they do so based on what they think the drug is worth, what they think insurance companies will pay for it, and so that's a real difference between the United States and other countries. In the U.S., it's further complicated by the question of insurance and middlemen that negotiate prices on behalf of insurers, and so there are a lot of dynamics that affect what the list price is, as well as what the price is that patients will ultimately pay.
Okay.
That this went before Congress not too long ago during a Senate hearing on the prices of these drugs. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders asked the CEO of Novo Nordisk, Lars Jorgensen, who makes those Epic, why the U.S. drugs are roughly 9 times higher in price than in other countries. And Jorgensen did say the U.S. healthcare system is complex. Insurers, pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs as they're called, what you just referred to there, Daniel. He says that all of that is partly behind the higher prices in the U.S. Let's listen.
We don't decide the price for patients. That's set by the insurance companies. I do acknowledge that there are patients who have poor insurance or no insurance. And if you, in the US, do not have insurance, if you have a low income, we actually have support programs to help those patients. I'm proud about those, but they are not a real solution. So I strongly believe we need to solve this with an insurance.
Okay, it is 11:49 a.m. PST. I am going to end this live stream, and a new live stream should initiate in 90 seconds or less.
Everybody in the world, everyone blames everybody else.
Ending now.
When we hear that response from Novo Nordisk.
No, I'm not. I have to wait for it to say changes saved. Okay, ending now. Starting a new one, which will be set in private. Read the description.
A lot of confusion as to why the prices are so much higher.